Pacific Defense Corps had protocols for everything. Category ratings for kaiju size and toxicity, evacuation procedures for coastal populations, neural handshake sequences for Jaeger pilots, emergency response timelines measured in minutes, not hours. But they had no protocol for what Dr. Herman Gottlieb was seeing on his screens at 03:47 hours on a Tuesday morning. "That's impossible," he muttered, adjusting his glasses as the seismic readings spiked again. "Impossible, impossible, impossible." Tendo Choi looked up from his station in the PPDC Hong Kong Shatterdome's command center. "What have you got, Herman?" "A signature." Gottlieb's hands trembled as he pulled up the data across the main display. Massive bio-reading, Mid-Atlantic Ridge, approximately 200 kilometers east of New York. Breach activity. "No," Gottlieb's voice cracked. "That's what's impossible. The breach hasn't opened. This came from somewhere else." Marshal Stacker Pentecost strode into the Licent, his presence immediately commanding attention. "Report." "Sir, we have a Category Warvu level signature moving toward the North American coast, but it didn't emerge from the breach. Our sensors show it surfaced from the Atlantic seabed." Pentecost's jaw tightened. In the 8 years since the Kaiju War began, every single monster had emerged from the interdimensional rift in the Pacific. Every single one. The breach was their battleground, their known enemy. This broke everything they understood. "Confirm the breach status," Pentecost ordered. Tendo's fingers flew across his console. "Breach is stable, sir. No activity in the past 72 hours. Whatever this is, it's not from there." "Could be a false reading," offered Herc Hansen, joining them. The Australian Jaeger commander had seen enough battles to be skeptical of anything that seemed too strange. "It's moving," Gottlieb said, tracking the signature. 18 knots and accelerating. Heading is... Christ, it's heading directly for New York. The command center erupted into controlled chaos. Operators began running scenarios, pulling up city evacuation protocols, calculating response times. Pentecost watched the digital representation of the creature moving across the display, like a torpedo aimed at the heart of the eastern seaboard. "Closest Jaeger?" he asked. "Gypsy Danger," Tendo replied. "Currently stationed at the Anchorage outpost for refit after the Seattle incident. We can have Raleigh and Yancey Beckett deployed in 90 minutes. Make it 60. I want eyes on this thing before it reaches populated waters." Pentecost turned to Gottlieb. "Get me everything you can on Atlantic seabed anomalies. If this thing's been down there, I want to know why we didn't detect it before." "Sir, the readings they're unusual." Gottlieb pulled up a bioscan. "The electromagnetic signature is different from standard kaiju. The toxicity levels are lower, but there's something else. Secondary signatures. Dozens of them, clustered around the primary target." "Parasites," Herc suggested. "Possibly. Or offspring. Or..." Gottlieb stopped, staring at the screen. "Oh God. What?" "It just breached the surface." Visual confirmation from a cargo vessel, the SS Alexander. They're transmitting footage now. The main screen flickered to grainy night vision camera feed from a terrified ship's captain. The ocean churned white with turbulence, and then it rose from the depths. Even through the poor quality feed, the creature's enormity was undeniable. Pale gray skin, quadrupedal stance, a face that seemed almost hammerhead in its alien configuration. It roared, and even through the digital transmission, the sound made veteran kaiju hunters flinch. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. But what made Gottlieb's blood run cold were the smaller shapes dropping from the creature's body as it moved. Dozens of them, each the size of a city bus, skittering across the ocean surface like spiders before diving beneath the waves. "Secondary contacts confirmed," Tendo reported, his voice tight. Unknown hostiles, estimated 40+ individual targets, spreading out from primary signature. Pentecost's eyes never left the screen as the cargo ship's camera shook, its crew screaming. Scramble, Gypsy Danger, full combat deployment, and get me the president. We need to evacuate New York. Sir, standard kaiju evacuation protocols for New York. Estimate 12 hours minimum for... We don't have 12 hours. Pentecost watched the monster sink beneath the waves again, its course unwavering. That thing will hit the coast in 4, maybe less. Across the Pacific, alarms began wailing in the Anchorage Shatterdome. Raleigh and Yancey Beckett were already suiting up, neural interface helmets being locked into place, when the mission brief came through their comm systems. Unknown. Kaiju. Non-breach origin. Category 4 minimum. The operator's voice crackled. You are authorized for full weapons deployment. Protect New York at all costs. Raleigh exchanged a glance with his brother as they stepped into Gypsy Danger's con-pod. Non-breach origin? What the hell does that mean? Means we're about to find out, Yancey replied, settling into his harness. The neural handshake initialized, their minds flowing together as Gypsy Danger's systems came online. 2 brothers, 1 machine, facing something that shouldn't exist. 4,000 miles away, the creature that would soon be designated Clover surged through the Atlantic depths, driven by instincts older than the breach, older than the Kaiju War, older than humanity's fragile understanding of the monsters that haunted their world. If you want to see more universe collision stories like this, hit that subscribe button and drop your favorite monster or character and the universe you'd want to see them clash with in the comments below. The war was about to change. Gypsy Danger hit the Atlantic at 0:45 hours, deployed from a heavy-lift cargo plane 30 miles offshore. The Jaeger crashed into the water with enough force to create a wave that rocked fishing vessels 10 miles away. Raleigh and Yancey felt the impact through the neural interface, their shared consciousness adjusting to the sudden shift from air to ocean. Depth readings? Yancey asked. 200 feet and descending, Raleigh replied, watching the Hyodi track their target. Contact is 12 miles northeast, moving fast. Through the drift, they operated as one organism. Yancey's tactical mind calculated intercept vectors, while Raleigh's instincts guided Gypsy's movements through the dark water. Sonar painted the ocean in shades of green and black, revealing schools of fish scattering in terror from something massive approaching. Getting secondary readings, Yancey said. Smaller contacts, lots of them. Parasites, Raleigh confirmed, remembering the briefing footage. Command says they're aggressive. When aren't they? The first parasite hit Gypsy's left leg without warning. Through the neural link, both brothers felt the impact. Not pain exactly, but pressure. Violation. Warning lights flared across their displays. Contact on port leg, attempting to breach hull plating, Tendo's voice crackled through the comm. Recommend immediate removal. Raleigh triggered the leg thrusters, spinning Gypsy in the water. The parasite, easily the size of a truck, clung to the Jaeger's armor with multiple legs, its translucent body pulsing as it tried to bite through the metal. Yancey brought the plasma caster online, but hesitated. Too close for plasma. We'll damage ourselves. Then we do it old school. Raleigh grinned. They reached down with Gypsy's massive hand, grabbed the creature, and crushed it. The parasite exploded in a spray of biological matter that clouded the water. Through the neural link, they felt a distant echo of its death. Nothing like the psychic pressure of killing a true kaiju, but present nonetheless. These things are terrestrial, Raleigh noted, not breach-born. Analyzing biosample now, Gottlieb's voice cut in from Hong Kong. Preliminary scans indicate Earth-based DNA structure. This is extraordinary. If these creatures evolved here, Science later, Hermann, Pentecost interrupted. Beckett's, you have incoming. Main contact is surfacing. The sonar lit up like a Christmas tree. The massive signature rose from the depths directly ahead, ascending so fast that Gypsy's system struggled to track it. Raleigh and Yancey braced as the ocean itself seemed to explode upward. Clover breached the surface 200 yards ahead of them. Both brothers stopped breathing. They'd fought kaiju before. Yamarashi in Tokyo, Scissor off the Aleutian Islands, Hidoi Cow near Vancouver. But those creatures, massive as they were, had a certain biomechanical logic to them. Purpose-built weapons from another dimension, designed to poison Earth's ecosystem. This thing was different. It stood on 4 legs like some prehistoric nightmare, easily 300 feet tall at the shoulder. Its skin was pale, almost translucent in places, revealing musculature that pulsed with each movement. The head was elongated, eyeless, or with eyes so small they were invisible at this distance. And when it opened its mouth, the roar that emerged made Gypsy's audio sensors redline. Category 4 confirmed, Yancey said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding their shared nervous system. Maybe Category 5. It's bigger than Knifehead. More parasites were dropping from Clover's body, splashing into the ocean like obscene rain. Dozens of them, spreading out, and some were heading directly for the coast. Command, we've got a problem, Raleigh reported. Those smaller contacts are making for New York. We can't engage the primary and stop them. Static crackled before Pentecost responded. Coast Guard and military are scrambling conventional forces for parasite containment. Your priority is the primary target. Do not let it reach the city. Clover's head swung toward Gypsy Danger, and though it had no visible eyes, both brothers felt the weight of its attention. It roared again, the sound vibrating through the water, through Gypsy's hull, through their bones. Initiating combat stance, Yancey said. Gypsy Danger rose to full height in the water, chest deep in the Atlantic, fists raised. The Jaeger stood between the monster and New York, 7 million souls depending on 2 brothers and a machine. Clover charged. It moved through the water with terrifying speed, its massive body creating a bow wave that lifted Gypsy off the ocean floor. The brothers had seconds to react. "Right hook!" they shouted in unison. Gypsy's fist connected with Clover's shoulder, with a thunderous impact that could be heard on the mainland. The creature stumbled sideways, crashing into the water, but recovered almost immediately. It lashed out with one massive forelimb, catching Gypsy across the chest and sending the Jaeger reeling backward. Alarms shrieked, hull integrity at 83% from a single hit. "This thing hits harder than Knifehead," Raleigh gasped. "And it's faster!" Yancey brought the plasma caster online. "Let's see how it likes this." The shot illuminated the pre-dawn ocean, a sun-bright lance of superheated plasma that struck Clover in the side. The creature screamed, a sound of rage rather than pain, and the wound was already sealing. Regeneration? Raleigh couldn't believe it. That's not possible. "Tell that to the monster," Yancey snapped. Clover came at them again, and this time, parasites swarmed with it, covering the water between them like a living carpet. Through the drift, the Beckett brothers made their decision in a fraction of a second. This wasn't going to be a quick fight. This was going to be a war. Dr. Newton Geisler burst into the lock-tent at Hong Kong Shatterdome, wearing mismatched socks and a shirt he'd clearly slept in. "You're not going to believe this." "Newt, unless you have actionable intelligence," Pentecost began. "It's not a kaiju," Newton practically shouted, waving a tablet filled with biodata. "I mean, it is, but it isn't. The DNA structure is completely wrong." Gottlieb pinched the bridge of his nose. "Newton, Please use your words like a scientist, not a caffeinated child. The sample Gypsy retrieved, the parasite. I ran it through every database we have. Herman, it's Earth-based, like actually from Earth. Prehistoric DNA markers, but mutated, evolved, changed by something. Newton's hands shook with excitement. This thing didn't come through the breach. It's been here the whole time. The command center went silent except for the sounds of battle being relayed from the Atlantic. On the main screen, Gypsy Danger grappled with Clover in the churning water, both titans locked in a struggle that sent waves crashing against the New Jersey coastline. That's impossible, Pentecost said quietly. Something that size would have been detected. Not if it was dormant. Deep ocean trench, maybe volcanic vents keeping it sedated. Something woke it up. Newton pulled up a map showing seismic activity. Look at this. 2 weeks ago, massive underwater landslide in the mid-Atlantic ridge. Probably disturbed its nesting ground or whatever. Herc Hansen leaned forward. You're saying we've got 2 separate monster problems? The breach kaiju and whatever this thing is? That's exactly what I'm saying. Newton's face was flushed. And if there's one of these things, there could be more. Sleeping giants all over the planet, waiting for the wrong vibration to wake them up. On screen, Gypsy's elbow rocket ignited, driving a devastating uppercut into Clover's jaw. The creature's head snapped back, but it retaliated immediately, its massive tail whipping around to slam into Gypsy's side. The Jaeger crashed into the water, alert screaming. Hull breach, Section 7, Tendo reported. Minor flooding, pumps compensating. Through the neural link, Raleigh and Yancey tasted salt water and fear. The Jaeger's right arm was responding sluggishly, hydraulics damaged from the tail strike. Clover circled them like a shark, and more parasites were swarming toward Gypsy's damaged section. We need backup, Raleigh said through gritted teeth. Negative, Pentecost's voice was firm. Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha are defending the breach perimeter. We've had 2 kaiju signatures in the past hour. The precursors are probing our defenses. So we're on our own. You're never alone, Mr. Beckett. You have your brother. Yancey managed a grim smile through the pain signals flooding their shared consciousness. Inspirational. Now let's kill this thing before it kills us. They forced Gypsy upright, water cascading from the Jaeger's armor. Clover had moved closer to shore, the water now shallow enough that both combatants could find footing. Behind the creature, the New York skyline glittered in the early morning light. Evacuation sirens wailed across the city. Plasma caster compromised, Yancey reported, switching to chain sword. The blade extended from Gypsy's arm with a metallic shriek, the monomolecular edge designed to cut through kaiju hide. But as they advanced, something strange happened. Clover stopped. The creature's massive head tilted, as if listening to something only it could hear. Then it turned away from Gypsy, away from New York, and looked east, out toward the Atlantic, toward the Pacific beyond. What's it doing? Raleigh wondered. In Hong Kong, alarms erupted across every console simultaneously. Breach activity, Tendo shouted. Category 4 emerging. Designation, Multiverse. It's heading for Sydney. Gottlieb's screens lit up with data. Wait, there's something else. The biosignatures. Multiverse is emitting pheromones, territorial markers. In English, a Herman, Herc demanded. The breach kaiju are marking their territory, and our friend in the Atlantic just smelled it. Newton's eyes went wide. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. What? Territorial aggression. If Clover perceives the breach kaiju as invaders on its planet? Newton looked up at the screen showing the massive creature in the Atlantic. We don't have 2 separate monster problems. We're about to have 2 types of monsters trying to kill each other, with us caught in the middle. Clover roared, a sound of pure territorial rage that shattered windows across coastal New Jersey. Then it turned and began walking. Not toward New York, not toward Gypsy danger, toward the Pacific Ocean. "It's heading west," Raleigh reported, stunned. "Moving inland." "It's going after the other kaiju," Yancey realized. "It's going to cross the entire continent." Pentecost's face was stone. "Intercept and contain. That thing cannot be allowed to reach populated areas. Gypsy, you are authorized for terminal force." The Beckett brothers looked at each other through the drift, a single thought shared between them. How do we stop something that's defending its home? Gypsy danger charged after Clover as the creature waded toward shore, each footstep an earthquake, parasites spreading across the beaches like a plague. Behind them, the Atlantic churned with the aftermath of their battle. And in the Pacific, Multiverse emerged from the breach, roaring its own challenge into a world that suddenly had far more problems than anyone had anticipated. Clover came ashore at Cape May, New Jersey at 06:47 hours. Each footfall cratered highways and collapsed buildings. The creature moved with single-minded determination, crushing everything in its path as it headed west, inland, toward something only it could sense thousands of miles away. "Civilian casualties mounting," Tendo reported grimly. "Emergency services are overwhelmed. Those parasites are attacking evacuation convoys." Pentecost watched the tactical display with growing horror. Red dots, parasite signatures, spread across the New Jersey coast like an infection. Each one was attacking anything that moved: people, vehicles, aircraft. Meanwhile, Clover's path of destruction carved a line straight through the heart of the eastern seaboard. "Gypsy danger? Status?" "In pursuit," Raleigh responded. The Jaeger was half running, half wading through the shallows, trying to catch up to Clover before it reached Philadelphia. "But this thing is fast for its size. We're losing ground." "Then slow it down." Yancey triggered the remaining plasma caster. The shot struck Clover's back leg, burning through hide and muscle. The creature stumbled, crashed through a marina, and whirled on them with frightening speed. "Got its attention," Raleigh muttered. Clover's roar shook Gypsy's hull. Then it charged, abandoning its westward march to deal with the threat behind it. The brothers braced for impact. The collision sent both giants crashing through an industrial district. Clover's claws raked across Gypsy's chest, tearing armor plating. Alarms screamed warnings about structural integrity. Through the drift, both brothers felt the Jaeger's pain as their own. "Chainsword!" they shouted together. The blade carved a deep gash across Clover's shoulder. Blue blood, kaiju blue, toxic and deadly, sprayed across the ruins. But this blood was different, less caustic, more organic. "Bioreadings confirmed," Gottlieb's voice crackled. "That creature's blood won't poison the environment like breach kaiju. It's adapted to Earth's ecosystem." "Great," Yancey grunted, dodging another claw swipe. "Doesn't make it less deadly." Across the globe in Sydney, Striker Eureka engaged Multiverse at the harbor. The Australian Jaeger was newer, faster, more advanced than Gypsy. But Multiverse was a breach-born killer, acidic and vicious. Chuck Hansen and his father Herc piloted with precision, their sting blades carving through the kaiju's armor. "Multiverse down," Herc reported as Stryker delivered the killing blow. "But Command, we've got a problem. Before it died, it was emitting some kind of call. Pheromones are saturating the water." Newton was already analyzing the data. "It's a distress signal. The precursors know one of their kaiju was killed. They're going to send more." "And Clover sensed it," Gottlieb added, watching seismic data from the Atlantic creature. "Every time a breach kaiju dies, this thing becomes more agitated. It's perceiving them as threats to its territory, to Earth itself." Pentecost felt the pieces falling into terrible place. "We're not fighting one war anymore. We're caught between two. In New Jersey, Clover broke away from Gypsy and resumed its western march. The Jaeger gave chase, but the creature was moving faster now, more desperate. It smashed through Trenton, each step taking it closer to Pennsylvania, to the heartland, beyond. We can't keep pace, Rowley admitted. It's going to reach major population centers. Then we make it stop. Yancey's jaw set with determination. They pushed Gypsy to maximum speed, hydraulics screaming in protest. The Jaeger closed the distance, grabbed Clover's tail, and pulled with all its mechanical strength. The creature crashed backward, crushing a warehouse district. But this time, Clover didn't just attack. It adapted. The tail wrapped around Gypsy's arm like a python, squeezing. Metal groaned. Then Clover's back legs kicked upward with devastating force, catching the Jaeger in the chest and sending it flying backward into a residential area. "Neural load spiking!" Rowley gasped as pain feedback flooded the drift. "Stay with me!" Yancey fought to keep them connected, to keep their minds synchronized despite the agony. "We can't drop out now." Clover stood over them, and for the first time, the brothers saw intelligence in how it moved. Not the cold, calculated intelligence of the breach kaiju. Those were weapons, tools of the precursors. This was something primal, instinctive. This creature wasn't invading Earth. It was defending it. "Command," Rowley said quietly. "I don't think it wants to destroy humanity. I think it wants to destroy the breach kaiju." "That doesn't matter," Pentecost replied. "It's killing civilians. It has to be stopped." But Newton was staring at his screens with wide eyes. "Wait, what if we don't stop it? What if we use it?" "Use it how?" Gottlieb demanded. "The precursors are adapting faster than we can keep up. We're losing the war. Everyone knows it." "But what if we had another player on the board? Something they didn't expect, didn't design a counter for?" "You want to weaponize that thing?" Herc's voice was incredulous from Sydney. "I want to not die when the breach opens and spits out a Category 6, Newton shot back. "This creature is territorial. It's aggressive toward breach kaiju. Maybe we can work with that." Pentecost's eyes narrowed. "That's insane." So was building giant robots to fistfight monsters. But here we are. On the ground in New Jersey, Gypsy struggled to rise. Clover loomed above them, but it wasn't delivering a killing blow. It was waiting, head tilted, as if making a decision. Through the drift, the Beckett brothers felt something impossible. Hesitation. The creature recognized them as a threat, but not the same kind of threat as the breach kaiju. "Stand down," Pentecost ordered suddenly. "Sir?" both brothers said simultaneously. "Let it go. Track it. But don't engage unless it enters a major city. I want to see where it's heading." Gypsy lowered its arms. Clover watched for another long moment, then turned and continued west, toward the Pacific, toward the breach. Clover crossed into Pennsylvania at 09:23 hours, leaving a trail of destruction 30 miles wide. National Guard units attempted to slow it down with artillery and airstrikes, but conventional weapons barely scratched its hide. The parasites were worse. They'd spread across 3 states now, attacking anything warm-blooded, breeding in the ruins. Parasite nests confirmed in Newark, Atlantic City, and Wilmington, Tendo reported. CDC is recommending immediate quarantine zones. These things are multiplying. Newton was frantically running calculations. They're not parasites. They're offspring. Clover isn't just one creature. It's a mobile ecosystem. Those smaller entities were living on it, feeding off it, probably for decades underwater. "And now they're loose," Gottlieb said darkly. "Splendid." Pentecost studied the map showing Clover's projected path. It was heading almost directly toward Seattle, toward the old breach site, before the rift had shifted to the Marianas. The creature's instincts were pulling it toward dimensional weakness, toward its enemy. How long until it reaches the Pacific coast? At current speed? 48 hours, Tendo calculated. It'll pass through Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago. Combined population of 20 million in its direct path. We need to redirect it, Herc said from Sydney, where Striker Eureka was being prepped for emergency deployment. Funnel it through less populated areas. How do you redirect something that size? Raleigh asked. Gypsy Danger was moving parallel to Clover now, tracking but not engaging, the Jaeger's damaged systems running on backup power. You give it something it wants more than its current heading, Pentecost said quietly. Newton, if we deployed a breach kaiju corpse in its path, would it pursue? Maybe. Its aggression seems triggered by pheromones, by the breach signature. A dead kaiju might not register as a threat anymore. Then we need a live one. The Loxant went silent. Sir, Gottlieb said carefully, are you suggesting we deliberately allow a kaiju through the breach to lure this creature away from population centers? I'm suggesting we control the battlefield instead of letting it be chosen for us. Pentecost turned to the main display. Striker Eureka, what's your deployment time to the California coast? 12 hours, Herc responded. But Marshal, if you're planning what I think you're planning. Tendo, what's the breach's current activity status? Elevated. 3 signatures detected in the past 6 hours, but nothing's emerged yet. They're waiting for something. They're coordinating, Newton said. The precursors know something's wrong. They sensed Mutivor's death, and now they're analyzing the situation. They're about to adapt. As if summoned by his words, alarms shrieked across every PPDC facility globally. Breach opening, Tendo shouted. Category 4, no, double event. 2 signatures, emerging simultaneously. On the display, 2 massive contacts breached the dimensional rift and began moving toward the surface. The precursors were escalating. Designations, Leatherback and Otachi, Tendo reported. Both Category 4, EMP Specialist and Acid Flyer. They're heading for Hong Kong. Pentecost's face remained impassive. Crimson Typhoon, Cherno Alpha, intercept and engage. Striker, maintain position for California deployment. What about Gypsy? Raleigh asked. Continue shadowing the target. When those 2 kaiju die, I want to know how it reacts. In Hong Kong Harbor, Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha deployed in perfect synchronization. The Weitong triplets controlled their 3-armed Jaeger with balletic grace, while the Kaidanovsky couple piloted Cherno's brutal tank-like frame with cold Russian efficiency. Leatherback surfaced first, its gorilla-like body bristling with electromagnetic organs. Otachi emerged seconds later, unfolding wings that shouldn't be possible on a creature that size. They're adapting faster, Chuang-Wei said through Crimson's comm system. Otachi has flight capability. That's new. Then we ground it, Sasha Kaidanovsky replied, Cherno's heavy fists already swinging. The battle was brutal and efficient. Crimson's speed against Leatherback's power, while Cherno grappled with the flying Otachi, dragging it down through sheer weight. But both kaiju were fighting with unusual coordination, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. In Pennsylvania, Clover stopped mid-stride. It's sensing them, Yancey said, watching the creature's head turn westward. It knows they're there. Through their helmet displays, the brothers watched Clover's posture change. It had been moving with destructive, but almost mindless purpose before. Now it looked focused, aware. Leatherback neutralized, came the report from Hong Kong. Crimson Typhoon damaged but operational. Cherno pursuing Otachi through the bay. Clover roared. Not the territorial challenge from before, but something different. Almost triumphant. Then it resumed walking, but faster now, more purposeful. It's hunting them, Raleigh realized. Not just defending territory, it's actively hunting breach kaiju. Newton's screens were going crazy with biodata. The pheromones. When Leatherback died, it released the same chemical markers as Multiverse. Clover can track them across continents. It's like a bloodhound, except what it's smelling is interdimensional invaders. Otachi eliminated, Cherno's team reported. But Marshall, something's wrong. Before it died, both kaiju were emitting coordinated pheromone bursts, complex patterns. They were communicating, Gottlieb said, calling for reinforcements. Or warning the precursors. The breach began pulsing with energy signatures, not opening yet, but preparing for something. Pentecost made his decision. All Jaegers, new priority. We're not stopping that creature. We're guiding it. Gypsy, herd it toward Nevada. Open desert, minimal population. When the precursors send their next wave, I want Clover there to meet them. You're weaponizing it, Herc said quietly. I'm using every asset available to defend humanity. That includes a very angry prehistoric monster that wants the same thing we do. Breach kaiju dead. Raleigh and Yancey exchanged a glance through the drift. This was insane, but insane had become their normal. Understood, Marshall. Beginning redirect maneuvers. Clover continued west, and behind it, the parasites spread like wildfire across the eastern seaboard. Redirecting a 300-foot territorial monster proved harder than anticipated. Gypsy Danger tried firing plasma bursts to Clover's north, attempting to drive it southward toward less populated routes. The creature responded by nearly taking the Jaeger's head off with a tail strike that left a sonic boom in its wake. New approach, Yancey gasped as they stumbled backward. We're not herders. We're irritants. Speak for yourself, Raleigh muttered, but he understood. They couldn't control Clover. They could only influence it. The creature smashed through the outskirts of Pittsburgh at 1400 hours. Evacuation efforts had cleared most civilians, but the city's infrastructure crumbled like sandcastles beneath Clover's feet. Office towers collapsed, bridges spanning the three rivers snapped like toothpicks, and everywhere, parasites scuttled through the ruins, claiming territory. Parasite behavior is evolving, Newton reported from Hong Kong. They're not just attacking anymore, they're nesting, building colonies in the destroyed areas. Clover isn't just a creature, it's an invasive species trigger event. Can we exterminate them? Pentecost asked. Eventually, maybe. But they're reproducing fast, and they're tough. Small arms fire barely slows them down. We'd need sustained military operations across multiple states. Add it to the list. Pentecost's voice carried the weight of a man fighting two apocalypses simultaneously. The breach pulsed again. Energy signatures building, coalescing. The precursors were preparing their response. In the Nevada desert, the PPDC had established a kill zone, miles of empty wasteland, evacuated towns, and most importantly, a carefully positioned beacon broadcasting kaiju pheromones synthesized from Otachi's corpse. If this works, Gottlieb said nervously, we'll have successfully lured two hostile forces into direct conflict with ourselves in the middle. Your optimism is inspiring, Herman, Herc replied. Striker Eureka was positioned 20 miles from the beacon, weapons hot, waiting. Clover reached Ohio at sunset. The creature had been walking for nearly 14 hours straight, and it showed no signs of fatigue. If anything, it was accelerating. The pheromone beacon was working, pulling it away from Chicago, drawing it toward the prepared battlefield. Marshall, Tendo said quietly, even if Clover fights the breach kaiju for us, what happens after? We can't control it, can't negotiate with it. Eventually, it'll become our problem again. Pentecost knew he was right, but right now they were drowning, and Clover was a lifeboat filled with holes. You took what you could get. One crisis at a time, Mr. Choi. The breach opened at 2,247 hours. Not a Category 4 this time. Category 5, the largest classification, reserved for extinction-level threats. The readings were so massive that Gottlieb initially thought his equipment was malfunctioning. Designation: Slattern, he whispered. 3 tails. Bioelectric discharge capabilities. Estimated 400 feet in length. It's bringing friends. 2 more signatures emerged alongside Slattern. Category 4, escorts. Raiju and Scunner, flanking the massive Alpha like royal guards. Triple event, Tendo said, his voice tight. The precursors are done playing. In Nevada, every alarm simultaneously activated. Striker Eureka's con pod lit up like a Christmas tree as Chuck and Herc Hansen felt the weight of what was coming. 3 kaiju, Chuck said flatly. Brilliant. Just brilliant. Crimson and Cherno are still being repaired from the Hong Kong fight, Herc noted. We're alone on this one. Not entirely alone, Pentecost said. On the tactical display, Clover's signature was now less than 60 miles from the kill zone, closing fast. It's detected them. Through some instinct beyond human understanding, Clover knew its enemies had arrived. The creature's pace shifted from determined march to full sprint. Buildings that had stood in its path were obliterated without slowing. Mountains proved minor obstacles. It was a force of nature given singular purpose. Gypsy Danger struggled to keep pace. The Jaeger's damaged systems were failing, hydraulics leaking, power reserves depleting. Raleigh and Yancey pushed through the pain feedback, keeping their drift stable through sheer willpower. We're not going to make it to Nevada, Raleigh said, watching their fuel levels. Then we make our stand wherever we drop, Yancey replied. The 3 breach kaiju made landfall at the California coast, and for the first time in the war, they didn't immediately seek out population centers. They waited. Scunner and Raiju took flanking positions, while Slattern stood between them, its 3 tails coiled like springs. They were hunting. Newton's screens showed pheromone exchanges between the 3 creatures, complex chemical communication far beyond anything previously documented. They're coordinated. The precursors aren't sending random monsters anymore. This is a strike team. Designed for what? Gottlieb asked. For killing whatever killed Multiverse, Leatherback, and Otachi. Newton looked up, face pale. They're specifically hunting Clover. The implications settled over the Loscent like a shroud. The precursors had adapted to Earth's unexpected defender. They'd analyzed the threat and deployed assassins. Striker Eureka advanced toward the 3 kaiju, insignificant against their combined mass. Chuck's hands were steady on the controls, but his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Dad, we can't take all 3. We don't have to take them. We just have to survive until... The desert floor trembled. Not from the breach kaiju, but from something approaching from the east. Seismic sensors registered a signature moving at impossible speed. Clover crested a mountain range, silhouetted against the moon, and roared its challenge across the Nevada wasteland. Slattern answered, and then, as humanity watched from satellites and distant observation posts, 2 world's apex predators charged toward each other with Striker Eureka caught directly between them. The real war had finally begun. The collision could be seen from orbit. Clover hit Slattern like a meteor, 400 tons of terrestrial fury against the precursor's apex predator. The shockwave flattened abandoned buildings for miles. Striker Eureka was thrown backward, tumbling across the desert floor as the 2 titans grappled. Slattern's 3 tails lashed out, wrapping around Clover's limbs, attempting to immobilize it. Bioelectric discharges crackled across both creatures' bodies, turning night into day. But Clover had spent millennia in the deep ocean, adapted to pressure and electric eels that would kill surface dwellers. It powered through the shocks and clamped its massive jaws onto Slatern's shoulder. Blue blood, toxic kaiju blue, sprayed across the desert. But so did Clover's own pale fluid, as Slatern's claws found purchase in its side. "Why, they're evenly matched," Herc reported, fighting to get Stryker upright. Warning lights blazed across their HUD. The shockwave had damaged already stressed systems. "We need to—" Raiju struck from the side, blindsiding Clover with a shoulder charge that sent the creature rolling. Scunner followed immediately, its blade-like appendages carving deep gashes across Clover's flank. "It's a coordinated assault," Chuck realized. "They're pack hunting." Clover roared in fury and pain, lashing out wildly. One massive limb caught Scunner and sent it flying into a rock formation. But Raiju was already circling back, and Slatern was rising, all three tails poised to strike. "Stryker, engage!" Pentecost's order cut through the chaos. "Distract them, even the odds!" The Hansen team didn't hesitate. Stryker's sting blades deployed, and the Jaeger charged Raiju from behind. The blades punched through the kaiju's hide, eliciting a shriek of pain. Raiju whirled on this new threat, abandoning its attack on Clover. "Got its attention," Chuck said grimly. "That's the problem," Herc replied as Raiju lunged. The fight splintered into chaos. Clover versus Slatern, pure savagery. Two alpha predators trying to kill each other. Stryker versus Raiju, precision against speed. And Scunner, recovering from its impact, deciding which battle to rejoin. In Pennsylvania, Gypsy Danger finally gave out. Warning klaxons screamed as the reactor entered emergency shutdown. The Jaeger ground to a halt in the ruins of Akron, Ohio, 70 miles short of the Nevada battlefield. "No!" Raleigh slammed his fist against the console. "We need to be there." "We're done," Yancey said, and though it killed him to admit it. "Gypsy's finished. We gave everything we had." Through their dying HUD, they watched satellite feeds of the Nevada battle, watched Clover fighting against overwhelming odds, watched Stryker barely holding against Raiju's relentless assault. "This is wrong," Raleigh whispered. "That thing crossed a continent to defend its territory, and we can't even help it." Across the world, Newton was watching the same feeds, his mind racing. The biodata pouring in was extraordinary. Clover's regeneration abilities, its resistance to Slatern's electric attacks, the way it instinctively targeted weak points in kaiju anatomy. "It's fought them before," he said suddenly. "Not these specific kaiju, but their kind. Clover has encountered breach entities before. Maybe decades ago, maybe centuries. That's why it recognizes them as threats." Gottlieb looked up sharply. "You're suggesting previous breach incursions?" "The breach is recent, but who says it's the first time the precursors tried invading Earth? What if they've been probing our dimension for millennia? What if Clover is one of Earth's natural defenses, a species that evolved specifically to repel extra-dimensional threats?" The theory hung in the air, impossible to prove, but terrifyingly plausible. In Nevada, Slatern's tails wrapped around Clover's neck, squeezing. The creature thrashed, struggling for air, its movements becoming desperate. Stryker was pinned beneath Raiju, the Jaeger's weapon systems failing one by one. Scunner had rejoined the fight, attacking Clover from behind. 3 against 1.5. The math wasn't working. While all Jaegers, Pentecost's voice cut through every comm channel. "Emergency deployment to Nevada. I don't care if you're half assembled. Move now." In Hong Kong, Crimson Typhoon's repair crews scrambled. The Jaeger was missing an arm, but the Wei-Tang triplets were already climbing into the con pod. In Vladivostok, Cherno Alpha roared to life despite cracked hull plating. They wouldn't arrive in time, but they would arrive. Clover's vision was darkening, oxygen deprivation setting in. But it had survived the crushing pressure of deep ocean trenches, had adapted to environments that would kill any surface creature. it did something none of the watching humans expected. It stopped fighting. For 3 seconds, Clover went completely limp in Slatern's grip. The breech kaiju's tails loosened fractionally, adjusting for the sudden dead weight. In that microsecond of reduced pressure, Clover's leg shot upward with piledriver force, catching Slattern directly in its lower torso. The Category 5 staggered, grip breaking. Clover drew in a massive breath and unleashed a roar that shattered what remained of nearby structures. Then it attacked with renewed fury, targeting Slattern exclusively, ignoring Skunner's attacks on its flanks. "It's prioritizing," Herc grunted, watching while struggling to keep Raiju's jaws away from Stryker's con pod. "Going for the Alpha first." "Intelligent tactics," Chuck agreed, then triggered Stryker's chest missiles point blank into Raiju's face. The kaiju reeled backward, temporarily blinded. Stryker rolled free and immediately engaged Scunner, drawing it away from Clover's vulnerable rear. And for a moment, just a moment, it looked like they might survive this. Then the breach opened again. "No," Tendo whispered in Hong Kong, staring at the readings. "Category 5, another triple event. 6 kaiju total on Earth's surface simultaneously. That's impossible," Gottlieb finished. "The breach can't sustain that much dimensional stress." But the readings didn't lie. 3 more massive signatures were heading for Nevada. The precursors had committed everything to killing Clover. The second wave emerged from the Pacific with a terrible purpose. 3 more Category 5 kaiju, larger, more specialized than anything previously documented. The precursors had emptied their arsenal. "Designations pending," Tendo reported, his voice hollow. "They're not in any database, completely new designs." Newton was frantically analyzing biosignatures. "They're purpose-built. Look at the morphology. One's got ranged weaponry, another's armored like a tank. The third is built for speed. The precursors designed these specifically to counter Clover." In Nevada, Clover was still locked in combat with Slattern, both creatures bleeding from dozens of wounds. The terrestrial giant's regeneration was struggling to keep pace with the damage. Scunner harried its flanks while Stryker Eureka barely held off Raiju. Then Clover stopped. Its head lifted, turning toward the Pacific coast. Even from hundreds of miles away, it sensed them coming. The reinforcements. "It knows it's outnumbered," Raleigh said from Gypsy's dead cockpit, watching the satellite feeds. Through the fading neural link, he felt Yancey's same helpless rage. 2 pilots, no Jaeger, watching the world end in real time. Clover made a sound they'd never heard before. Not a roar of aggression or territorial challenge. Something else. Almost mournful. "What's it doing?" Chuck asked, still grappling with Raiju. Clover's body began to glow. Bioluminescence rippled across its pale skin in patterns that shouldn't be possible. Complex, rhythmic, pulsing with energy that made radiation sensors scream. The parasites still clinging to its body began dropping off, scattering across the desert floor. Energy spike!" Gottlieb shouted. "Massive power buildup in Clover's core systems. I don't know what it's doing." Newton's eyes went wide. "It's calling them. The parasites. All of them." Across 3 states, every parasite stopped what it was doing. Thousands of them, scattered through ruined cities, turning as one toward Nevada. Then they began to move. Crawling, running, flying. Every offspring Clover had shed was returning to the source. "They're swarming," Tendo reported, tracking the mass migration. "Converging on Nevada from the entire eastern seaboard. ETA, 12 hours. It's preparing for a siege," Herc realized, calling in reinforcements. But 12 hours was too long. The 3 new kaiju would arrive in 3. Clover seemed to understand this. It released Slattern, shoving the wounded Category 5 away, and turned to face west, toward the ocean, toward the coming storm. Its luminescence faded, energy conserved for what was coming. Slattern, Raiju, and Scunner regrouped, forming a defensive line between Clover and the coast. They weren't attacking anymore, just blocking, keeping Clover contained until the execution squad arrived. "They're stalling," Chuck said. "Smart. Bastards are actually smart." Pentecost made a decision that would haunt him forever. Stryker, Crimson, Cherno, new orders. Protect Clover. Silence filled every comm channel. "Sir," Herc finally said, "you want us to fight alongside? We're out of options. If Clover falls, 6 Category V's will turn their attention to our cities. That thing is the only asset capable of engaging multiple kaiju simultaneously. We keep it alive, or humanity dies. Those are the choices." In Vladivostok, Sasha and Alexis Kaidanovsky shared a grim look. Cherno Alpha had always been their home, their purpose. Now that purpose was defending a monster. "Understood, Marshal," Sasha said simply. Crimson Typhoon, still missing an arm, arrived first. The Weitang triplets brought their damaged Jaeger screaming across the Pacific, every system redlining. They crashed into Scunner from the side, 3 mechanical arms grappling with kaiju flesh. "For humanity!" Chung Wei shouted. Cherno followed minutes later, the tank-like Jaeger smashing into Raiju with enough force to separate it from Stryker. The 4 Jaegers formed a defensive perimeter around Clover, who watched them with what might have been confusion. "Don't think we're friends," Chuck muttered toward the creature. "Enemy of my enemy. Fart, that's all." Clover didn't respond, but it didn't attack them either. The battle lines were drawn. 4 damaged Jaegers and 1 wounded terrestrial titan against 3 breach kaiju, with 3 more Category 5s incoming. The math was still impossible. In Ohio, Raleigh stared at Gypsy's dead reactor core. "There has to be something we can do." "Not without power," Yancey said. "We're out." But Raleigh was thinking about Clover's bioluminescence, about the energy readings, about how the creature had survived in the deep ocean where thermal vents provided power. An insane idea began forming. "The reactor's offline, but the core itself is still intact, still hot." Yancey understood immediately. "You want to feed reactor radiation to Clover? That's insane, I know. But that thing's been absorbing energy from the environment for millennia. What if we give it a boost?" They had no way to transport the reactor core, but they had something else. Gypsy Danger's self-destruct sequence. A controlled detonation would scatter radioactive material for miles, material that Clover might be able to absorb. "Marshal," Raleigh transmitted, "we have a way to help, but it'll cost us Gypsy." Pentecost didn't hesitate. "Do it. 1 Jaeger is acceptable losses if it tips the balance." The Beckett brothers initiated the sequence with heavy hearts. Gypsy had been their home, their partner. Destroying it felt like murder. 30 minutes to detonation, the AI announced. "Evacuate immediately." They climbed out of the con pod for the last time, leaving their Jaeger behind in the Ohio ruins. They'd get clear. And then Gypsy Danger would create a radiation field that Clover could potentially feed from. If this worked, if it didn't, they'd just wasted their only Jaeger for nothing. In Nevada, the precursor's reinforcements appeared on the horizon. 3 massive shapes moving inland with unstoppable momentum. Clover roared defiance at the approaching doom. The Jaegers stood their ground. And somewhere in the distance, Gypsy Danger's reactor began its final countdown. The 3 new kaiju arrived like gods of destruction. The first was designated Bladehead, a serpentine nightmare covered in razor-sharp protrusions, built for shredding armor at range. The second, Hammerfist, moved on 6 legs with fists like wrecking balls, pure siege weaponry. The third, Tailspike, was sleek and fast, its entire body designed around a scorpion-like tail that dripped with acid. They joined Slattern, Raiju, and Scunner in a formation that spoke of hive mind coordination. 6. Category 4 and 5. Kaiju against 4 crippled Jaegers and 1 exhausted terrestrial creature. "Well," Chuck said quietly, "it's been an honor." "Not dead yet, son," Herc replied, though his voice carried little conviction. Clover stood in the center of the defensive perimeter, flanked by humanity's last operational Jaegers. The creature's breathing was labored, wounds across its body still seeping pale blood. But its eyes, if they were eyes, remained fixed on the breach kaiju with undiminished hatred. The 6 monsters charged as one. What followed wasn't a battle. It was apocalypse. Bladehead's projectile spines shredded Crimson Typhoon's remaining arms in the first seconds. The Wei-Tang triplets screamed in unison as neural feedback overloaded their drift. The Jaeger collapsed to its knees, defenseless. Hammerfist's massive fists caved in Cherno Alpha's chest plating, crumpling the reactor housing. Sasha and Alexis fought to maintain containment, but the old Jaeger was dying. They knew it. Everyone knew it. Striker Eureka faced Tailspike and Raiju simultaneously. Chuck's hands flew across controls, dodging acid sprays and snapping jaws with desperate precision. But even Striker's advanced systems couldn't account for 2 opponents this coordinated. That left Clover against Slattern, Scunner, and the newly arrived Hammerfist. The terrestrial titan fought with savage desperation. It caught Scunner's blade arm in its jaws and ripped it clean off, spraying toxic blue blood. But Slattern's tails wrapped around its legs, dragging it down, while Hammerfist's blows hammered its spine with bone-crushing impacts. "We're losing," Tendo stated the obvious from Hong Kong, watching helplessly as humanity's last defense crumbled. Then Gypsy Danger detonated in Ohio. The explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. Radioactive material scattered across a 50-mile radius, carried by atmospheric winds toward Nevada. The fallout wouldn't reach the battlefield for hours, too late to matter. But Clover felt it. The creature's head snapped eastward, toward the distant explosion. Something in that radiation signature called to it. Energy, sustenance, something its biology recognized and craved. A last chance for power. Clover made its choice. It stopped defending itself. Let Slattern's tails constrict. Let Hammerfist's blows land. Let Scunner carve into its flesh. And instead, it focused everything, every ounce of remaining strength, into one desperate act. The bioluminescence returned, brighter than before, painful to look at directly. Clover's body became a beacon, calling to its scattered offspring across half a continent. "Energy spike off the charts!" Gottlieb shouted. "It's burning its own biomass as fuel," the parasites responded. Those close enough, hundreds of them scattered across Nevada and eastern California, turned and rushed toward their progenitor. They swarmed over the breach kaiju like a living tide, biting, clawing, distracting. It wasn't enough to stop them, but it was enough to slow them. Slattern thrashed as parasites covered its face, blocking vision. Hammerfist crushed dozens with each step, but more kept coming. Scunner's precision strikes became wild swings as the creatures overwhelmed its sensory organs. In that moment of chaos, Striker Eureka broke free from Raiju's grip. Chuck didn't think, just reacted. The Jaeger's chest cavity opened, revealing the armed nuclear warhead they'd been saving for the breach assault. "Dad," Chuck said quietly, "get out. Now." "Like hell," Herc replied. "One of us needs to survive. Tell them we tried." Before Herc could argue, Chuck triggered the manual ejection for his father's harness. Herc's half of the con pod explosively separated, rocketing him clear of the battlefield. Chuck was alone in the drift now, the neural load crushing, but he only needed to last 30 more seconds. "Striker Eureka," Pentecost's voice was tight with understanding. You are cleared for nuclear detonation." "Copy that, Marshal." Chuck aimed Stryker at the cluster of kaiju surrounding Clover. "For my mom, for everyone we've lost," he charged. Stryker crashed into Slattern with the warhead primed, locked the kaiju in a bear hug, and triggered detonation. The nuclear explosion vaporized everything within 200 meters. Stryker Eureka, Slattern, Scunner. Gone in an instant. The shockwave threw the remaining kaiju backward, decauterized Clover's wounds with sheer heat, and turned the Nevada desert into glass. When the light faded, 3 breach kaiju remained standing: Hammerfist, Bladehead, and Tailspike. Raiju had survived, but was crippled, one leg vaporized. Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha were down, pilots unconscious or dying. Clover stood alone in the center of a nuclear crater, burned, bleeding, half dead, but alive. And in the distance, carried on radioactive winds from Gypsy's sacrifice in Ohio, came the energy it needed. Clover's body began absorbing the fallout, converting radiation into cellular regeneration. Wounds started closing, strength returning. The 3 kaiju advanced for the kill. Clover planted its feet, lowered its head, and waited. Not in surrender, in preparation. The parasites were still coming, thousands of them, mere minutes away. And deep in the Pacific, the breach began pulsing with unprecedented energy. The precursors weren't done. They were preparing to send everything. But for now, in this moment, it was just one wounded creature against 3 monsters, and Clover refused to fall. Clover's regeneration accelerated as Gypsy's radiation reached the battlefield, particles settling across its burned hide like healing rain. The wound sealed, muscle tissue knitted together, and something else happened, something the precursors hadn't anticipated. Clover began to adapt. Its biology evolved over millennia to survive Earth's harshest environments, now processed nuclear energy like fuel. The creature's pale skin darkened, taking on a faint luminescent quality. Its movements became faster, sharper. The radiation that should have poisoned it instead made it stronger. "Impossible," Gottlieb whispered, watching the bio-readings. "It's metabolizing nuclear fallout, converting it directly into cellular energy." Hammerfist charged first, 6 legs churning desert glass. Clover met it head-on. And this time, when the kaiju's massive fists struck, Clover didn't stagger. It braced, absorbed the impact, and retaliated with a headbutt that cracked Hammerfist's skull plating. Bladehead fired its spine projectiles, hundreds of razor-sharp shards. Clover took them across its back and kept moving, the enhanced regeneration healing the wounds almost as fast as they appeared. Tailspike circled, looking for an opening, its acid-dripping stinger poised to strike. But Clover had fought in deep ocean darkness, where predators attacked from every angle. It sensed the kaiju behind it and lashed out with its tail, catching Tailspike across the midsection and hurling it into Bladehead. The parasites arrived like a biblical plague, thousands of them pouring across the desert from every direction, responding to their progenitor's call. They swarmed the 3 breach kaiju, covering every surface, biting through armor, clawing at joints and sensory organs. Not strong enough individually to kill, but in these numbers, overwhelming. Hammerfist tried to crush them by the hundreds, but for every dozen killed, 20 more took their place. Bladehead's precision was useless against such numbers. Tailspike thrashed wildly, its acid killing parasites, but also burning its own hide. Clover waded through the swarm, its offspring parting like water, and fell upon Hammerfist. The creature's jaws found the kaiju's throat and bit down with hydraulic pressure, learned from crushing whale carcasses in the abyss. Blue blood fountained. Hammerfist's struggles weakened, then stopped. Category 5 eliminated. Bladehead and Tailspike broke formation, backing away from this terrestrial nightmare that had just torn apart their strongest warrior. For the first time since emerging from the breach, the kaiju showed something that might have been fear. In the Pacific, the breach pulsed frantically. The precursors were abandoning the assault, calling their remaining forces back, cut their losses, retreat while they still could. But Clover wouldn't let them escape. The creature charged Bladehead with shocking speed, closing the distance before the serpentine kaiju could react. It grabbed Bladehead's spine-covered body, heedless of the damage to its own hands, and swung the kaiju like a weapon into Tailspike. Both monsters crashed together in a tangle of limbs and tails. Clover didn't give them time to separate. It fell upon them with primal fury, claws and teeth finding weak points, crushing organs, breaking bones. The parasites joined the assault, and what followed wasn't a fight. It was an execution. When the frenzy ended, Bladehead and Tailspike lay in pieces across the glassed desert. Clover stood among the carnage, covered in blue and pale blood, breathing heavily but undefeated. 6 Category 4 and V kaiju, all dead. And Clover remained. In Hong Kong, the Luxent was silent. Every person present was processing what they'd just witnessed. A single terrestrial creature had survived what should have been impossible, had adapted to nuclear radiation in real time, had killed the precursor's apex predators. "The breach is closing," Tendo finally said. "Energy signatures dropping to minimal levels. They're retreating." "They're afraid," Newton said with something like awe. "The precursors are actually afraid. They threw everything at Clover and it wasn't enough. They know Earth has a natural defense now." Pentecost allowed himself one long breath. "Status of our Jaegers? Crimson Typhoon critical but salvageable. Cherno Alpha's reactor breached. Total loss. But pilots ejected successfully. Striker Eureka." Tendo's voice caught. "Gone." Chuck Hansen gave his life to turn the tide. Gypsy Danger destroyed in Ohio. Raleigh and Yancey Beckett survived the evacuation. 4 Jaegers deployed, 2 destroyed, 2 crippled. 1 young pilot dead. The cost had been catastrophic, but humanity had survived. In Nevada, Clover stood amid the ruins of the greatest battle ever fought on Earth's surface. The parasites swarmed around it, returning to their positions on its body, finding purchase on regenerated hide. The creature was wounded, exhausted, but alive. It turned toward the Pacific, toward the breach. The threat had retreated, but Clover's instincts told it the danger wasn't over. The dimensional rift still existed. The invaders could return. The creature began walking west again, slower this time, but purposeful, heading toward the ocean, toward the breach itself. "Marshal," Tendo said urgently, "Clover's trajectory has it heading directly for the breach coordinates. If it reaches the rift, let it go," Pentecost said quietly. "We wanted a weapon against the kaiju. We got one. Let's see what it does." Across the devastated eastern seaboard, military forces moved into parasite-infested zones. The offspring were dangerous but manageable without their progenitor nearby. Extermination efforts would take months, maybe years, but they could be contained. In the Pacific, the breach pulsed weakly, the precursors likely arguing among themselves about how to proceed. They'd lost 6 kaiju in a single day. Their invasion had been stopped not by humanity's Jaegers, but by Earth itself defending its territory. And somewhere in the deep ocean, other sleeping giants might be stirring, awakened by the battle's seismic echoes. Ancient defenders that had slumbered for millennia, now roused by the scent of interdimensional invaders. Clover reached the California coast at dawn, waded into the Pacific, and disappeared beneath the waves, heading west, toward the breach, toward war. The world held its breath as Clover vanished into the Pacific depths, tracking the breach with predatory certainty. PPDC satellites lost visual contact within minutes, but seismic sensors painted a picture of the creature's journey, a determined march across the ocean floor toward humanity's greatest nightmare. The breach remained stable, but quiet, its energy signatures muted. The precursors had gone silent, their hive mind calculating new strategies against an enemy they'd never anticipated. Earth had proven more dangerous than any world they'd encountered, not because of humanity's Jaegers, but because the planet itself fought back. In Hong Kong, Marshal Pentecost stood before the damaged remains of Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha, contemplating the new reality. The Jaeger program had been humanity's answer to the kaiju threat, but now they'd unwittingly unleashed something far older and potentially more dangerous. Clover was nobody's ally, nobody's weapon. It was a force of nature with its own agenda. "What happens when it reaches the breach?" Herc Hansen asked, his arm in a sling, still processing his son's sacrifice. "We watch," Pentecost replied, "and we prepare for whatever comes next." Newton Geisler was already compiling reports about Earth's other potential defenders: sonar anomalies in the Mariana Trench, unexplained movements beneath Antarctic ice, electromagnetic disturbances in the Arctic Ocean. If Clover was one of Earth's guardians, there might be others. Sleeping. Waiting. The parasite outbreak would take years to fully contain, but they were manageable, a price paid for survival. Raleigh and Yancey Beckett stood in the ruins of Akron, Ohio, staring at the crater where Gypsy Danger had made its final stand. Their Jaeger was gone, but its sacrifice had turned the tide. Sometimes victory required loss. Across the Pacific, Clover descended into the breach's coordinates, drawn by instinct to the source of contamination. Whether it would attempt to seal the rift, establish a permanent guard, or find a way to invade the precursor's dimension remained unknown. But one thing was certain: the kaiju war had changed forever. Humanity was no longer alone in defending Earth. Ancient powers had awakened, territorial and vengeful, ready to repel any threat to their world. The precursors would return. They always did. But next time, they'd face more than Jaegers. They'd face Earth itself. And in the deep places of the world, other giants stirred from their long sleep, sensing that the age of monsters had truly begun. May the Force be with you. More stories await.